Attorney General Pam Bondi was on the Hill earlier today, facing questioning from lawmakers to discuss the Justice Department's budget for next year. The DOJ has faced cuts this year as part of the Trump administration's push to shrink the size of the federal government. I do want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion for more on this. So what concerns did lawmakers raise about these cuts' effect to national security?
Well, it's a concern that we have seen lawmakers pose to other congressional, in other congressional hearings to other administration officials when it comes to this issue of the budget and restructuring of various federal agencies, and certainly the Justice Department hasn't been immune to that. So many lawmakers were asking questions about, for instance, in the case of a number of grant programs that the Justice Department offers, there was some pretty sharp questioning at one point on the part of Patty Murray, who was a top Democrat in the Senate, who asked about grants that impact, women, and grants that impact, law enforcement pursuing, rape cases. There was other questioning about, redeploying some assets with respect to counterterrorism and scaling back with respect to cybersecurity. So those were some of the concerns that some members raised. In the case of that exchange with Patty Murray, the Attorney General said that she was happy to re-review some of these grants. She said she certainly doesn't want to do anything that has a negative impact, and so she was willing to take another look at some of these programs that the agency has cut.
Nikole, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell was back on the Hill also delivering his semi-annual monetary report. What type of questions did he get from lawmakers?
We got a lot of questions about tariffs, tariff policy, how that's impacting the economy. Of course, he kind of remained mum about the potential of a rate cut in the future, which, of course, a lot of investors continue to watch. But by and large, of course, even as he has come under fire at times by the president, typically in these types of settings, the Fair Chair tries to remain as independent, as apolitical as possible in terms of just discussing the impact of monetary policy on the economy, and that really was the point not only of this hearing today, but also his testimony before the House yesterday.
Yeah, lots of pressure from the administration about interest rates and other matters. We know that for sure. What is the latest, Nikole, on talks about the so-called big, beautiful bill, which obviously has kind of spurred division even within the Republican Party?
Yeah, that's right. Well, certainly the Senate is hopeful that it can move forward with a vote on this package by the end of this week in order to try to meet the president's deadline of getting a bill signed by July 4th. So there's a lot of last-minute scrambling and deal-making. We know, for instance, that members of the SALT caucus, which make up a lot of blue state Republicans in the House, met with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier this morning because that remains a sticking point as the Senate had tried to strip out that provision which was negotiated in the House bill, whereas these House members want to make sure that it remains untouched or that any changes to it are minimal. There's also still the sticking point and issue of Medicaid, and so we have seen some new proposals start to emerge there to address some senators' concerns with respect to the impact on rural hospitals. And then as we speak, we have the White House press secretary here on Capitol Hill, along with some other members of the White House legislative team that are meeting with House Republicans, because of course if the bill clears the Senate, it will have to go back over to the House, and that's why it's important to have members of the House on board as well, despite the changes that the Senate is considering.
All right, Nikole Killion on the Hill for us today. Thank you so much.